Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video lecture today we will cover a new chapter of biology, that is heredity and evolution. So let's begin with the chapter. So, how many types of reproduction is there? There are two types of reproduction, asexual and sexual. Asexual produces clones, whereas sexual produces gametes. In asexual, single parent is there, and in sexual, two parents are there, that is male and female. Asexual have little variation in population only through mutations. And in sexual reproduction, it is slower and energy consumptive, and it have lots of variation. Whereas sexual is fast and energy efficient. Example of asexual reproduction is budding, binary fission, etc. Sexual reproduction example is human and trees. Now, variations. When we observe a cornfield, we see that there are little variations among the individual plants, and in animal too, including human beings, which reproduce sexually, we see distant variations among individuals. Variations are more in sexual reproduction and less in asexual. So, how many types of variations are there? First, somatogenic variations. These are the variations that affect the somatic or body cells of the organism. They are also called the modification or acquired character, since they are acquired by the individual during its lifetime. Factors causing them are environment. The environmental factors are medium, light, temperature, nutrition, wind, etc. And such environmental factors bring about changes in the phenotype of the individual. All the variation in the species do not have equal chances of survival in the environment. So the survival of the variation depends on the nature of variations. Variations enable stability to the population of various species by preventing them from getting wiped out during adverse conditions. Thus, variation helps a species in survival. Second type of variation is germinal or blastogenic variation. They are produced in germ cell of an organism and are inheritable. Now, what is heredity? Heredity refers to the transmission of the characters from parents to offsprings. And what is inheritance? It depicts the pathway of genetic traits and its expression from one to another generation. Traits are the characteristic feature of an organism present in a physical form that is visible or in a physiological aspect of the organism. There are two types of traits, acquired traits and inherited traits. Acquired traits are the traits that are acquired by an organism over the period of its lifetime, and inherited traits are traits that are transferred from parents to the offsprings. Acquired traits do not change in genes or DNA, whereas inherited traits occur due to the change in DNA. Acquired traits cannot pass from generation to generation, but inherited trait can pass from generation to another. Now, in our cell, small thread-like structures are called chromosome, and our chromosome contains genes. Okay. Now, what is EGFR? EGFR makes a protein known as epidermal growth factor receptor, which positions the cell membrane to bind to the other proteins outside the cell to help it receive signals to trigger cell growth, division, and survival. Now, let's see the difference between allele and genes. Alleles are different variations of genes, but a gene is a short sequence of DNA encoding for a certain trait. Allele is encoded for a single protein, whereas genes produce opposite phenotypes. It may be heterogeneous or homogeneous. Allele examples are black, brown, blue, or green eyes color, and gene examples are skin, hair, or eye color. Now, dominant traits. The traits that express themselves in an organism in every possible combination and can be seen are called dominant traits. Whereas recessive traits are traits which is not expressed in the presence of a dominant allele is known as recessive trait. Now some terms to understand. What is homogeneous and what is heterogeneous? Homogeneous is when both the alleles of a gene are of the same genotype, then it is homogeneous, and heterogeneous when both the alleles of a gene are different in the genotype. Okay. Then genotype is the genetic makeup of the organism and phenotype is the physical appearance of the organism. Now, one scientist was there who is known as father of genetics named George Johann Mendel. He was educated in a monastery and went on to study science and mathematics in University of Vienna. He blended his knowledge of science and maths to formulate law of inheritance. A question can come that who formulated or who discovered the law of inheritance? Then the answer would be George Johann Mendel. Or you can just say Mendel. Reasons for the selection of pea plant for the genetic experiments, because it was easy to grow and the flowers of the pea plants are hermaphrodite, that is flowers which have bisexual characteristics, and it is easy to obtain pure breed plant through self-fertilization. The generation time of pea plant is very less. They have excellent disease resistance and have an optimum rate of survival. Please take the screenshot of this slide as this question can become in your exam. Now, what is monohybrid and dihybrid cross? Crosses that studies the inheritance pattern of a single gene controlling one character are called monohybrid crosses, and whereas dihybrid crosses are crosses in which inheritance of two pairs of contrasting characteristics is simultaneously studied. Now, in Mendel's experiment, he crossed a short plant TT and a tall plant T. These plants were called parents. They were cross-pollinized. Then he observed that the offsprings of this cross called the F1 generation. Next, Mendel led the F1 generation to self-pollinate. That means tall plant offspring were crossed with each other and the generation produced was known as F2 generation. In monohybrid crosses, he studied one trait, but in dihybrid, he studied two traits simultaneously. Now, Mendelian laws of inheritance. First law of dominance. Law of dominance says that a gene has two contrasting alleles and one always expresses itself in the organism irrespective of the other allele. This allele is called dominant allele. Now first let's see the difference between monohybrid inheritance and dihybrid inheritance. Monohybrid inheritance is a inheritance of a single allele pair, whereas dihybrid inheritance it inheritance patterns of two pairs of characteristics during a dihybrid cross. And in monohybrid inheritance, it is defined in Mendel's first law, and in dihybrid inheritance, it is defined in Mendel's second law. Monohybrid inheritance phenotypic ratio of F2 generation is 3:1 and dihybrid inheritance phenotypic ratio of F2 generation is 9:3:3:1. Monohybrid inheritance genotypic ratio of F2 generation is 1:2:1 and dihybrid genotypic ratio of F2 generation is 1:2:1 2:4:2:1:2:1. And then monohybrid inheritance it is used to study the pattern of inheritance during the first and second generation offsprings. And in monohybrid inheritance, it is used to study the inheritance pattern of dominant and recessive characters of two different traits. Second law. Law of segregation says that traits get segregated completely during the formation of gametes without any mixing of alleles. It means when an organism makes gametes, each gamete receives just one gene copy which is selected randomly. Third law. Law of independent assortment says that the traits can segregate independently of different characters during gamete formation. In other words, during gamete formation, one pair of traits segregates from another pair of traits independently. This gives each pair of characters a fair chance of expression. We can say that the allele of a gamete which is received from one gene does not influence the allele received for another gene. How do traits get expressed? Cellular DNA is the information source for making proteins in the cell. A part of DNA that provides information for one particular protein is called a gene. For that protein, for example, the height of a plant depends upon the growth hormone, which is in turn controlled by the gene. If the gene is efficient and more growth hormone is secreted, the plant will grow tall. If the gene for that particular protein gets altered and less of it is secreted, then the plant will remain short. Sex chromosome in humans. A male has one X chromosome and one Y chromosome, whereas female has two X chromosomes. Sex of a child depends on the two conditions which take place during fertilization. The two conditions are: if a sperm carrying X chromosome fertilizes an ovum which carries X chromosome, then the child will be girl. If a sperm carrying Y chromosome fertilizes an ovum which carries X chromosome, then the child born will be boy. Now a question. A cross between a tall pea plant and short pea plant results in progenies that were all tall plant, because A. Tallness is recessive trait, dominant trait, or shortness is the dominant trait, or height of a pea plant is not governed by gene capital T or small t. The correct answer is B. Tallness is the dominant trait. Next, a zygote which has an X chromosome inherited from the father will develop into A girl, B boy, C twins, D can't say. The correct answer is girl. So thank you guys for watching my video, and please like, share and comment my videos too. And don't forget to subscribe my channel.